serious question, so get your serious hat on. Do you masturbate? Imagine asking that question in a Catholic, a Baptist, a Mormon, or a Muslim mosque. Imagine. It wouldn't happen. And nobody would raise their hand. The preacher certainly wouldn't raise his hand. Religionists live a lie. They live shameful. They live out of shame. They're ashamed they had premarital sex. They're ashamed that they masturbate. They're ashamed that they use porn. And they do use porn. They're ashamed that they've done sex acts that disgust themselves. And they're ashamed, most of all, to tell their children the truth about sex and sexuality. They live a big lie. They lie to themselves and others about their own sexual behavior. They pretend they don't. They pretend not to do what we know they do, what everyone else does. They preach against the very behavior that they engage in. And they let their children, they lie to their children about their own behavior. We know 95% of all people have premarital sex, except Catholic priests and Baptist ministers. Yeah, that's 5%, right? So people are having premarital sex, but they're telling their children they did not have it. They're lying. Religionists have to live a lie in order to maintain the facade of their religious ideology. How do we know this? Well, we know it because from our research and from other research. If you saw my sex and secularism talk online, or you downloaded our data at ipcpress.com, you can get the report for free. We know from our own data and other major national surveys that they engage in the same sexual activities as secularists. They start sex at the same time. They begin masturbating at the same time, and they give their children false information about sex. The U.S. research on abstinence alone tells us almost all that. The evidence is that religionists also have more sexually transmitted infections. They have higher levels of unwed teen pregnancies than secularists do. We have lower teen pregnancies and less disease. They use porn about as much as we use porn, except in some states, like the most religious states in this nation, like Utah and Mississippi, are higher in porn use than other states. And it is higher 6 out of 7 days. Any guesses on the day that it's not? Sunday. But they catch up for the rest of the year. Religionists actually get divorced more than secularists do. Even as they say, bring Jesus into your marriage and it will make your marriage happy. That is bullshit. It will stop the sex in your marriage, as I talk about in my new book, Sex of God. Many religionists lose sex when they get married, after not very many years afterwards. And religionists have more abortions. The highest abortion rates in the nation are in the states that are the most religious, including Oklahoma, Arkansas, Texas, and these fundamentalist places, because their kids aren't getting proper information. I call it politics of shame. This man never masturbates. He never had sex outside of marriage. We know his wife did. He never uses birth control. His wife did have an abortion, but he doesn't allow anybody else to have one. And he wants everybody else to get his sexually transmitted infection called Catholicism. Or at least the way the Pope describes that. I mean, what he's telling us is that the United States should not allow women to have birth control, should not allow women to have abortions, should shame women if they walk into a birth control center of any kind, whether it's Planned Parenthood or something else. Because of their shame, religionists cannot rationally evaluate their own behavior. And when you can't evaluate your behavior, then you cannot correct that behavior. Religionists are constantly in a negative feedback loop where their behavior undermines the very thing they're trying to do. That's why they have more abortions. They they have more teen pregnancies and more diseases. They have difficulty channeling and controlling their own sexual urges. They experience self-loathing and fear of their own natural urges. And they experience depression largely because of that, in many, many cases. They lie to their spouse and their children about sex. Many Christians, many religious spouses lie to their spouses about having had premarital sex. I know men and women who had multiple partners before they got married, but they said they were virgin when they got married. So the whole marriage is based on a lie. And then they have to turn around and tell their children, don't have sex before marriage. Your father and I did not. Another lie. It's lie after lie after lie among most religions. They express their sexual frustration in anger, blaming and judging others, and especially in homophobia. I think, this is my personal opinion, I think the roots of homophobia are, for many people, are in the anxiety people have about their own masturbatory activities and shame about their own bodies. When people are told from very young masturbation is a sin, and they're going to do it anyway, every primate masturbates. I studied with the great psychotherapist Albert Ellis back years ago. He had a thing to say, 97% of men masturbate and the other 3% are lying. Probably not quite as high for women, but we know women masturbate probably 80% or more. Now, to prove my point, as a great example, this was a quote I got just a few months ago from the megachurch pastor Mark Driscoll of Marsville Megachurch. Masturbation can be a form of homosexuality because it is a sex act that does not involve a woman. Aren't you glad the women get off here? That was a bad pun. If a man were to masturbate while engaged in other forms of sexual intimacy with his wife, then he would not be doing so in a homosexual way. However, any man who does so without his wife in the room is borderline